So my name is Chloe Driver, but they call me Kaylani. And my baby's name is Hannah, but they labeled her Nancy. I am married to Benjamin, but I'm not the only one. There is Jessica and Sarah, and I don't think he is done. He calls himself a prophet, and we must follow his lead. There is no meat and no dairy, and the only drug is weed. There's no alcohol allowed here, not even a glass of wine. And he thinks that it is healthy to drink a glass of his urine. He lets us talk about our feelings, but we must do what we're told. I was 16 when I met him, and he's really friggin' old. And us women, we must serve him, or he'll leave us in the cold. We must treat him as a prophet, like he's made of solid gold. And I tried to leave the family to teach my daughter a new life. He refused to let me take her, that's not behavior from a wife. He thinks the CIA is watching, and he must protect his cash. I can't even buy some good cream to treat my baby's diaper rash. I feel trapped and I am stuck here, and I wish someone could see the mental anguish that I now feel. They all say I am crazy, I don't wanna be around him, but I'm also still his wife. The only way that I can leave here is if I took away my life. But poor Hannah would be subject to his weird and stupid views, and I don't want her to become another person he can use. So in my mind I have no option but to go and get a knife, and I'll take my baby with me to the blissful afterlife.
Welcome. How's everybody doing? Sorry, I think I got a little close to my camera there. Continuing to have issues here with my cropping. There we go.
Still playing with your circle.
Yeah, I know, man.
Like the circle of truth.
Yes. So, welcome everybody. I guess today we're here to talk about Hannah Driver and Chloe Driver and Hannah Driver. I guess it'd be both, but we're going to be talking about that case, reacting, discussing the verdict. I know a lot of you had a lot of interest in that and a lot of questions. We're going to try to answer some of them today in regards to what sentence Chloe's facing. What does the verdict mean? Verdict, which was guilty by reason of mental defect. And why would the jury not have chosen then? What was the reasons they didn't go with not guilty by insanity if they're going with guilty by mental defect? And there's a lot of nuance involved in the law down in Georgia. It's very difficult to get not guilty by reason of insanity. And that played out here, I think. And then we'll discuss whether we think it was right or wrong or not. So, Jody, what did you think of the verdict?
I think they got it right myself, out of the options that they were given. She clearly suffers from mental illness. But I do agree that she showed signs that she was aware of what she was doing at the time of the incident, given that she apologized to Hannah prior, that she locked the door, um, you know, that she showed remorse, and she knew the difference at that point between right and wrong. So, yes, I think they got it right. I don't know. My confusion laid in the defence's strategy because, as I was talking to you before, I didn't know why they didn't go perhaps down the route of battered wife perhaps syndrome, or that kind of defense, given that she did have so much history of domestic violence and that whole background, and then the trigger of him throwing the dirty shirt at her. To me, the jigsaw puzzle sort of fitted that scenario more than the other, but having discussed it with you, I understand now. So we can go through that if you like. But yeah, I think they got it right, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
absolutely. Yeah, to touch on what you were talking about there, I know you and I were talking about that
Mm,
before in prep, about why they wouldn't have gone with, say, a battered spouse to defense or something like that. And that,
mm,
as I explained to you, that has a lot to do with the fact that um, in order to accomplish that, you have to show a battered spouse really deals with
oh, comments. Whoops.
perceiving um, perceiving a level of violence. In other words, the self-defense laws allow for you to meet violence with violence, but battered spouse simply says, okay, you're allowed to have an imbalance there. So in other words, like I gave you the example, it's got to tie in to say, okay, a lot of times in abusive situations, there's a um, pattern of abuse. So, for instance, it
Mm,
might start with somebody that says, "Okay," comes to him and says, "Hey, the house isn't in order," and he throws something. And
yep.
so, at that point, in this case, the wife picks up a gun, he throws this item, and she shoots him. Many people will say, "Well, how the hell does throwing that item amount to allowing you to shoot him?" Well, in her mind, that was the beginning of a pattern
Yep.
of abuse that led to her last time almost dying, getting choked out, getting beaten severely. So in her mind, and that's what the battered spouse syndrome is meant to recognize, is it's meant to say you don't have to allow this person to take you to the brink of dying. You can take
Yep.
action beforehand, even
Mm-hmm.
if the force is excessive, because what you're reacting to is
Is the
all this past
repetition?
abuse. And in this case, there wasn't that throwing of the shirt would have never been able to connect to say, okay, you'd have to show that was a connection to a
Yep.
pattern of abuse that was coming. And really, there was no way. She's up in the room alone. She goes down. She gets a knife. So it's not an insanity defense. The only what would cover that is insanity, which is what the defense was attempting to argue in this case. And that was their argument was that they couldn't really argue delusion because the delusion part, as was explained by the prosecutors,
Wasn't
the
constant.
delusion component was it's a delusional self-defense. So
Mm,
it would be the perception that I think I'm in the middle of a alien fight, and I'm on a spaceship and I come out and I encounter you and I think you're an alien. So I immediately pull my gun out and start shooting at this alien
mm-hmm.
and run away. And then it's later determined that no, I just shot up my whole family. But I really thought I was encountering aliens. In Georgia, if I believed that I was encountering aliens, then I would be entitled to be found not guilty by reason of insanity because that
Mm-hmm.
was that was in my mind. I
Yep.
was shooting in self defense, so that would be the delusional component. And didn't know I was like, if I would have known I was shooting my family, I'd have never done it. And then there's the part that says, okay, there's the idea that you don't know right from wrong. In other words, it wasn't in self defense, but it was like whatever you were doing, you didn't, you thought you were doing something and you thought it was the right thing to do. It was something you
Yep.
had to do. And you just couldn't perceive the wrongness of your actions. And again, that's why that is such a difficult standard to reach because in Georgia, they say, okay, they can bring in lay people, people that were around you, and you
Yeah.
offer an opinion. They can bring in actions, words, behaviors before and after. And it really gets into saying, okay, did you really know? Because Georgia says if you were mentally ill and had a mentally ill thought process that led you to decide to kill your family, that doesn't alleviate your criminality of the act.
Yeah.
That just says, okay, you knew you were wrong. You gave in to this compulsion to kill your family, but you still knew it was wrong when you were giving in. So we're going to punish the fact that you knew it was wrong. We're going to forget the fact that we're going to take care of the fact that you were mentally ill, and we're just going to treat that and then let you serve a sentence, which kind of doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
In its own side, but it's been put forth to there a lot of litigation has been put forth. If you go to Justia, you can see there's it's almost like a 7-8 page document of all the cases, and then you can go look up cases from it and see all the case law that essentially
for the insanity defense in Georgia.
In Georgia, yeah, it's because it's a fault. It's it's very vague. It's very difficult to defend. And
Yeah.
remember, in the due process clause of the Constitution, United States Constitution, every state has a due process clause that says you've got to be able to clearly understand the charges, and you've got to be able to clearly be able to defend against that. So if you have an insanity law that's too vague for a jury to understand, then it makes it impossible for it to be applied fairly to the criminal defendant. As a result, it would be considered unconstitutional.
So the insanity defense is very difficult to achieve in Georgia, apparently, isn't it?
Oh, extremely. That's
so
why they said
the
expert witness in the case said it's less than 1%.
So for her to actually have that verdict is quite rare.
Yeah, well, only 1% of criminal defendants in Georgia actually do the insanity defense, and less than 1% of those defendants are successful. So think about that math. It's extremely, and again, the hospital that she would have gone to in Millage, Georgia, it is only a 185 bed facility, and that specifically is there for people to go be evaluated for competency. It's where people stay if they're deemed incompetent and can't stand trial, and they're sending them there to get them,
She was assessed prior, though, wasn't she, and deemed competent?
Well, I think there was some competency issues for a little while. There was some issues that she had, but then eventually I think she overcame it. I think they were questioning that, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I thought there was. And then, but, excuse me.
Bless you. So she was charged with malice murder.
Correct.
What's the difference between malice murder and first degree murder, or is there a different law in Georgia, or?
Well, in Georgia, malice murder encompasses first degree murder. That is the first degree murder.
Okay.
In Georgia, and then they also have felony murder too, which covers it. That's why you get charged with. You can get charged with 2. And malice murder basically is intentional murder. Basically, it's murdering with intent to kill.
Yep.
Essentially, you had a evil intent in your heart to go kill.
Predisposition.
And then felony murder covers pretty much like, okay, I didn't intend to kill the person, but I was committing a felony. I was committing a felonious act.
Yep.
And in the commission of that felony, the result of that felonious act
ended in a death,
kills the person. So that's why you see them charged sometimes with both. There's actually an interesting case where a jury the state charged the defendant with both. The jury found on one charge, it was the I believe it was malice. It was the malice charge. They found him not guilty by reason of insanity. On the felony unaliving, they found him guilty but with mental defect. The United States Supreme Court held that you can't have a split verdict. If on one it was mentally defective, so the Georgia wanted to retry him on the felony.
Was that double jeopardy?
United States Supreme Court said it was, and they attached it, and he was released. He was sentenced on it. He was sitting in prison, and they appealed it, and he got out. So, yep.
All right. So, I must say, we did have a giggle with a couple of the witnesses on this trial, namely Jason Spillers.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a risky move for her to put him on, given that, and let him ramble at the same time, because most of the time whilst I was watching the trial, I actually thought he was a better defence witness than a state witness. But then when she went back and tied it all together at rebuttal, I understood where she was coming from and her plan of attack then, because that was the reality that Chloe lived in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And no, thank you. No, thank you very much. What's wrong? Yes, I thought he worked better for the defence too, but it sort of balanced itself out once she explained why she did what she did.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, I think. But yeah, yeah, just bizarre person. And why do you think they didn't subpoena Benjamin?
Well, I mean, I don't think he. I don't think he. Again, I don't think he represented any need. I think they felt it would probably be too big of a distraction to the case because, again, that would have evoked sympathy for her. Potentially
Okay.
in the way they would have cross-examined him, and it would have opened up a whole slew of issues and things that would have been brought into the trial that the state definitely did not want coming in and overshadowing the case. So, I mean, I don't know what Benjamin would have brought to the table because remember, at the end of the day, even though the prosecutor said we have to prove everything and I'm going to put forth all my best evidence, there wasn't an issue of whether she did it or not. Benjamin would have been witness to that, said, yeah, she did it. The defense was not saying he did it. So there's no reason for him to come in and say, oh, yeah, he did it or he told me to do it. None of that was being alleged. So the question would be, what purpose would Benjamin have served when you're dealing with was she mentally ill or not? And they had Jason Spillers in the room. They had 911 people. So I think they felt like Jason Spillers was less of a distraction than Benjamin because he might have very well went in there and said some stuff that was, not favorable to the state. You saw Jason Spillers tried to do that by saying,
yeah, he used it a bit like a stage, didn't he, to preach his
well,
wares.
I think they knew Benjamin would have done that potentially. It would have been a disaster, I think.
And I must give Cindy a big shout out too whilst I'm here and thank her very much. She has been behind the scenes with me going through all of the because Jason, as you know, when he testified, he's actually in custody. And he's in custody with a federal prison, I think, on cyber stalking charges and stuff, revolting stuff. So Cindy's been researching behind the scenes with me and giving me all these amazing links and stuff. So thank you very much, Cindy. And with Benjamin as well, he's got a rap sheet as long as your arm. So he's at the moment, like, if you look at their Instagram pages and stuff, he's already got 4 or 5 kids under his belt now, and
Well,
it's
he's
just
got.
grim.
I think I don't know if where I was reading it at. I can't remember if this was something I saw in the trial or was reading about it, but I know he's very mentally ill. Okay,
Oh,
and he should be institutionalized, and he is. It's a basically he's just a guy who's just completely. He's schizophrenic. I mean, that's what he. I think that's what it was. I think
yeah,
it was
they
in.
said schizo.
It was the testimony of the girl that they brought in. The defense brought in.
The ex-wife, yep,
Kickendall or whatever her name. Yeah, I mean
Gabriella.
he's clearly a guy that should not be out running around. And again, like I
He's
said,
grooming young women.
well, he's trafficking women in my
Yeah,
opinion. So that's why I say. But at the same point, he needs to be help. He needs to get help. I mean, He's just out of control, and he goes after vulnerable women that he can bring within his control, who are looking for meaning in life. They're looking to
Yep.
understand things, and he comes in and he's very dangerous in the sense that he can, like for instance, I mean, when you think about somebody trying to understand things, I thought one of the craziest things, but one of the things that I could see how some of these people could actually connect with is like she was saying she was afraid to get a picture taken because a picture is a snapshot of a moment that somebody might be able to use to re-download that moment at some point. So therefore, you never die. Now, obviously, that's ridiculous, but
Mm.
in a mind of a young, vulnerable person,
Yep. Impressionable.
that's like something that could be connected to. That's like, oh my God, you're right. Well, why? Well, why are pictures here? Why do people take pictures? How are they even possible? I mean, it's a moment, and it is. I mean, and you got phones
Well,
that
he's got
have
plenty
them.
of pictures of young girls on his Instagram, let me tell you.
Well, the question is that like from what he's telling them is that look, when they take your picture, now the government and everybody can control that moment in your life, and they can go back and re-download it and affect things and change things. I mean, you can just imagine what somebody with a creative disease mind can come up with because
Mm.
that's kind of what these people do. I mean,
There's some disease in there for sure.
yeah.
Just some of the things that he writes on there it's
Oh,
bizarre. It's bizarre
absolutely,
stuff.
it is. Well, I mean, like I said, he's a troubled individual who needs some help. And unfortunately, unless he's taken in custody and comes under the custody of the state, although I don't even know, or the government, although I don't even know. I mean, this is the problem that we have right now. We don't, as was heard yesterday in the sentencing hearing for Spencer
Leilani.
Pearson.
Ah,
Well, it came out. The defense attorney was saying, hey, actually, the probation department had said that they didn't even recommend a prison sentence for the young man. They said whatever sentence he has, he needs to be institutionalized in a mental institution, and he needs to have therapy to deal with his things. And the defense attorney said, yeah, this was interesting that the probation department didn't even take a position on sentence. The only thing they put in there is he needs help. But guess what? The state of Florida has no resources to even do that. So why I don't even know why the probation department put that in there, Judge. But when that's a sign that something needs to be, made part of the sentencing process to try to reach that because that was something the probation department put in. So it's just telling that as you look around, Georgia, millage, where Chloe Driver might go, used to be one of the largest mental institutions in the country, but now it's whittled down to 185 bed place. Um, I mean, we have to, like I was saying in that young man's case. I mean, obviously the judge took care of the problem by locking him up, but not everyone's going to get locked up. And
mm,
when we throw, for the rest of their life, so if we don't deal with this guy, if we don't have the resources to deal with this guy, he is going to get back out. And then he's going to continue to accelerate in his crimes until he does something so bad that he has to
yep.
be taken away for life. But by then, he's left victims. And
Yeah.
we have a
Left a trail of destruction
responsibility.
behind.
Well, I think, my opinion, if it should already be just a component that thinks there's a mental problem of anybody that's involved in the criminal justice system. So they should have to go through a mental evaluation. They
Yeah.
should have to go through mental health treatment because most of these people have traumas in their life that they've got to deal with that brought them to drugs, self medication, which impaired their judgment, which caused them to then go out and engage in criminal behavior.
Hmm.
And whether it's anger, whether it's like I said, anger, which could be again trauma induced anger. Uh, there's an underlying factor there that comes into play.
That's a good question, Cindy. We were talking about this before. So,
No.
what now that she has been convicted of having mental health issues, I was reading up on the Georgia laws that sometimes because she's been found guilty, they don't necessarily get put into a mental health facility. They could just go straight into the prison system. What's the um, what happens to her now? Where does she go from here?
Well, she really doesn't. Um, she really doesn't. Not too much different than her being found guilty. The only thing
Mm,
is now it will be part of her program, part of her process. The judge is going to order that she be evaluated by the millage, and there will be a treatment plan, either a treatment plan that can be administered at whatever facility she goes to, or she might go to the Georgia State Mental Hospital for a while, get some treatment, and then when she's deemed fit, she'll be taken back to a prison. Now, if she's given life with parole, which means she would serve 30 years. I mean, in theory, there's a possible route she could serve all 30 years at a mental institution if she's that impaired, which is what would have happened if she was found guilty by reason of insanity. So
hmm.
she wasn't going to go home. I mean, she was definitely not
No,
going to go
no,
home,
no.
because, and the thing is, as they've said, a lot of doctors don't like to don't like to uh, put their name on the line with a patient and say, yeah, this person's ready to go, because then they get out and go kill somebody. It comes back to them ultimately in the end. Who let them out, and why weren't they ready to go, and
Mm. Well,
why weren't
I wouldn't have thought that there was a big I wouldn't have
yeah.
thought there's a big plan of attack, so to speak, in Georgia if less than 1% of their um, mental health or insanity defences actually get passed. So they wouldn't have a big component to their you know um, post verdict treatment plan for these people. But, do you know what I mean? Like they're only taking a small segment of the community, and so how to deal with these people wouldn't be a big part of their policies and procedures. Does that make sense? It's not the
Yeah,
norm.
it does. It
Yeah.
does. Well, except for the fact that I think it is. I think it's a deeper problem than what is. Uh, Again, it also comes to the mindset of what we look at when we look at corrections and we look at crime. We look at crime as a willful deal. This is just a bad person. But the reality is every criminal, if you put them down and you look at their history, I
No.
mean, most criminals are on drugs. Most criminals are angry people. If you go deep in their background, we're not looking to excuse the behavior. We're looking to understand the behavior, and that is one of the things that has. That's why right now we don't have a system that stops crime. We just go crazy with these ridiculous punishments, and it doesn't stop anything, because the reality
Reactive
is
instead of being proactive.
yeah, the person doing these crimes is a person that's troubled. I mean, they've got problems, and as a result, it's the failure to understand that, the failure to treat that, the failure to recognize that, the failure to try to look at their history and look at their behaviors and dig deep into their background. In my
Mm.
opinion, there should be a deep dive history. It's there, right? There's school records on that person. There's everything,
Yep.
and if you can look at that and say, okay, this is this person, this is what happened, and then you force them into therapy to dig deep into their background and say, let's help you with this. But instead, what do we want to do? We want to warehouse them. And that's because I'll tell you why. I mean, I learned this in college, took corrections course in college. And at that time it was getting bad, but it wasn't as bad as it is today. But it's the privatization
Mm.
of
Yep.
the privatization of our prison system is what's led to where we're at right now, because essentially there is zero incentive to cure the problem of crime in actuality, because what they really want is more people in, because more people in means it's these companies that are owned and are running the prisons are getting money. They're getting more money than if you look at the per capita amount of money that you would look at it income wise. It costs about $55,000 a year to house a prisoner.
Hmm.
Okay, that prisoner that's in there is not even making that or contributing that to society most
Yep.
likely when they're out. But yet we're paying that for them to be there, and yet we're getting nothing out of it but a worse criminal on the other side.
Yep.
So to me, that's a real problem. But that's because what they're doing, and I guarantee you, they're not really getting $55,000 a year. Can you imagine? I mean, $55,000 a year per
Yeah.
person.
Where's the
Uh,
rehabilitative process?
well, how does it cost that much money to How does it cost that much money? I mean, you could, if you literally took $55,000 a person, applied that to a family, say you put a family of four, you're talking about $220,000 a year of income that family could live on, and these people are living in an 8x10 cell with very limited access to TV. They're eating the worst of foods. They're overcharged on their phone calls. They're overcharged on the
Staffing.
commissary. Well, it's not staffing though. It's not even that. We got prison guards are some of the worst paid people among us. So it ain't
Really?
staffing. Oh yes, they're paid. They make maybe $10 to $15 an hour. They can't. That's why a lot of places are understaffed and can't get people to go in under those costs. What it is they're keeping the extra money, and the actual cost to keep the prisoners is well below the amount they're being paid by the states or the federal government. And that's why these prisons have been run into the ground, because instead of being run by the states, who have a self-interest
They're
in
owned
the
privately.
outcome, they're owned privately by private companies who
So
are
they run for
interested.
profit.
Correct. And then
Yeah.
then it's these same people and
Mm-hmm.
companies that are driving the laws, which is
Yep.
why there was a great book that came out that talked about how they basically made all of these crimes, especially in the federal system, these non-victimless crimes,
Yep.
and stiffen the sentences. And
So
the main driver of the perception of the American public of the justice system is actually not these are all politicians. No, it's politicians by the prison industrial complex who have a self-interest in telling you that they have a crime problem. So you need to be tough on crime, and we need to increase sentences. But they never are held accountable for the results, because what they really should do is it should be just like schools and colleges and everything else. It should be, all right, you're accepting our money, so tell us the results you're getting out of this, because
yeah.
what we would expect is you're taking this prisoner, you're getting them off they're in your custody, but we're expecting a better citizen on the other end. We're expecting that they've been able to be dug into and said, hey, where have we gotten to with this? And the reality is, well, nowhere. We've tortured them, and
So
we've
is
made them pay for their crimes.
their funding linked to their level of crime and their illnesses or anything like that? Like
No, it's literally based on
across
the
the board?
amount of prisoners. Why do you think they have all this overstaffing or overpopulation? You would think a state would say, "Oh, well, let's build another prison," right? No, because the prison is now owned by this private company who says, "Okay, we don't want to spend extra money. We would rather just put if we have a 1,500 house facility and we can put 4,000 people in it, and we're getting $55,000 a year, just more people in. We're moving a mat and roll them up. And as long
Yep.
as we perceive the American public that these people are bad people, that they're unworthy of treatment as a citizen, as a normal person, then they win. But there is a huge amount of money that's going in through lobbyists who are lobbying to have the perception of things the way they want you to see them, and that is that crime needs to be taken care of by tough punishment, lock them up for life. These companies want a lifetime prisoner, and the thing is, they're going to keep them alive at the very lowest level of sustenance,
Yep.
because keeping them alive, they get money. So when a prisoner dies, they got to put more in. But you have to really ask yourself, when you have a system being run this way, I mean, think about the judges that have been bribed, that were getting kickbacks from these from there was a judge up in upstate New York who actually ended up getting charged, but it turned out that he was supposed to be running an at-use or an at-risk youth court, right? And instead of trying to help these kids, he was just sending them to prison, and each one he got a kickback on, and he was giving these tough, strong prison sentences, and he was getting money for it. It got uncovered, and he ended up, I believe, going to prison himself. But the bottom line is, this is a problem that we have, because we have to ask ourselves, what do we really want our correctional system to be? And before we say, well, we want it to be as tough and as rough, and that's the problem. And a lot of people,
As a deterrent.
Deterrence doesn't work. It's been studied, and it doesn't. It just flat out doesn't.
Yeah.
There is not a person out there that is thinking to themselves when they're making a decision to commit a crime 98 to 95% of the time for the reasons why these crimes
What's
are
my
being
life going to
committed.
be?
What's my life? I mean, these people's lives are so bad out here.
Yep.
Most of the time, they don't care. I mean,
Yep.
and it's not that that's not that they're looking for a better life inside. It's just that they're not thinking that way. Where they're like, oh my God, I'm going to
You
get
get
life
3
in
hots and a
prison.
cot.
Well, they're not even thinking like that. They're
Mm.
just diseased mentally. That's what I'm
Yes.
saying. They're not even mentally able to make that assessment because they're incapable of it. Because they're
We have the
reacting on. They have
same
poor
thing.
impulse control. They're on drugs. They've been they've had traumas in their life that make them incapable. I mean, most of these people that you see, you're watching them and you're hearing them. And it's like the guy that jumped the judge in Vegas. This guy was a guy who's had problems. He was abused. He went through the foster system, and the judge didn't even bother to look at who she had in front of her. And she goes in there and decides to take the approach she did. Not to say she deserved what she got, because she didn't. But I'm saying this is a problem when you put in here. There are a lot of people. Most people. We should assume that a majority of the criminals that are coming into that courtroom they're not diseased to the point that they shouldn't have responsibility, but that they are mentally. These are the people whose problems, which we know mental health is a big player just in society as a whole, but these are the ones who have really acute problems that have brought them to the point where they're no longer able to control their impulse. They're no longer able to live as a member of society. So it's like, well, what do we do? Well, so we put them together and just let them beat each other up? No, that's a horrible idea. What we should be doing is listen. Let's put some resources towards that, right? Let's figure it out. But then you got the problem that says, well, what about these people out here who aren't involved? Why do you have to get that treatment? And this is kind of the overall broader spectrum to say, okay, well, how do you deal with this then as a society to say, well, we're going to give prisoners mental health support. We're going to give them all these things because they committed a crime. But then you got Joe Blow over here who says, well, my health insurance doesn't allow me to even do that, and I can't afford it. So I guess I'm supposed to just let myself deteriorate.
Yep.
So you see the rub against each other, where there's a component to go against each other.
Why should they get it? Nothing,
until you take care of them, you will never take care of this. But one thing you can also say is we've never been brought into the idea of the bottom up, to the sense that society is how we treat our worst members of society will rise up and raise the standards how everyone else lives, right? If you increase the bottom, we've always been taught, hey, make the top better, and then they're going to make everyone else better as it runs down through. And that's not true. You make your bottom better, your top gets higher, right? You just raise the bar at the bottom. And then you start saying, well, this worked here. And well, instead of looking at it like, well, let's take it away from them because I don't have it, it should be, well, let's give it to them, but then let's also figure out how we can give it to everybody else. And what's a system that we can put in there if this is a huge issue that's driving crime, right? But here's the problem. What that would do is it would pull people away from those facilities. It would make the facilities spend money on the prisoners. That would take away from their profitable bottom lines. So then you're like,
that's a massive job. Massive.
It's a mess. It's a mess of a situation because the profit part, you're not going to get these companies that are making all this money that are going to go, okay, so now we're going to go spend all these resources, and then they're not making any money anymore, because the reality is there should be no profit. Like the only profit in corrections should come from the return of that person back into society as a functioning member who can now contribute. And in my opinion, a parole plan should be, listen, you need to be contributing to society, and we're going to track your contributions, because now you have a victims that you changed. But you've got to live better. You've got to show that, listen, yes, this person suffered at your hands, but as a result, we learned all of this. We garnered all of this information. We prevented all these other people. And now you're going to come out, and now you're going to show that you can become something and demonstrate that, as opposed to, hey, you know what? We have absolutely broken you as an individual. We've thrown you into a torture chamber, and we've just showed what sadists we are, and how much we can torture you. And you know what? Shame on you for torturing somebody. And then we go, well, gee, why is all this bad things happening around us? Well, it's because that's the mindset we're throwing in there. You can't, like I always said, you can't you can't sit there. I always found it funny when you're having a conversation, maybe you're having a significant other or maybe a family member or a friend or whatever, and and maybe you shot a little attitude their way, right? So what's their reaction? They shoot attitude back to you and say, "Don't talk to me that way." And I'm like, okay, so wait a minute, you're going to talk to me the way you don't want me to talk to you? I mean, that's where we're going to get. So then I fire back, and then you fire. Somebody there has to say, "Wait a minute, let me set the standard for you," and then I'm going to say, "Listen, uh, come on." I'm showing you respect. You show me respect. So we have to show them the respect we want them to show us, right? To bring everything up. And then you start going up. But if you start saying, we're just going to come down and beat you, and then we're getting worse. We're not getting better. So it's like, that's what I found, we have to, we have to acknowledge the end result is coming back. These people, and that's what I thought the defense attorney did a great job in the Pearson case yesterday. That was a case that obviously this young man needs to be punished, but he also needed to be rehabilitated. And the laziness of just throwing a life sentence his way is like, wow, that's just the laziness point that we've gotten to where we've said, you know what, we're not going to try to,
you're not worthy.
Right, because not every case is going to have a life sentence on it. There's going to be another guy that's going to walk in there that's going to get a 20-year sentence, but he might have similar things, and that guy's going to go for 20 and come out and just keep doing stuff until he gets to that point. And how do you do it? So, like I said, it applies to Chloe Driver's case. It's like in this instance here where everybody says, "Oh, they were all worried. Well, what's she going to?" Well, don't worry, she's not. She's going to be punished, but at least in a sense, the mental defect is at least a showing, even if it's just on paper and not much gets done with it. It is at least a step in the right direction because it's a designation that should be probably present and used much, much more. Because what it should.
Can she be forced to take her medication?
Yes, that's what that does. It forces her.
Good.
It's forced. It is a part of her plan because she was found mentally defective.
Okay, that's good.
So it is forced. Now, there's a big, thing there. There's a big caveat and big asterisk. What will they actually do? Well, your guess is as good as mine. And a lot of people have reported that says they don't do anything for you, really.
Because often they call it a chemical restraint too. And
well, that would be, they're not going to give that to her out of prison. What they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, driver, come over here, take your pills. And then if she does something extreme inside the prison, then they're going to have to consider that as part of their process. Like, it's kind of like my son, he's a diabetic, right? So everything he does at high school, and we've had this since he was in middle school and intermediate school, he gets a plan, right? So if he gets in disciplinary problems, the diabetes has to be considered. Was there a sugar issue? Was there this? So basically for her now, it's just, she gets to have this considered in every aspect of her stay in that prison and institution. And then it could result if she has advocates and lawyers and the ability to fight. They could come in and say, hey, you know what? She's just losing touch with reality. Send her to millage, and they're send her up to millage for a couple of weeks or a month or two or whatever. But again, it's a 185 bed facility. They're going to need to get her out of there eventually. So at some point, someone's going to sign off on her. And since she's just going back to prison, no big deal. And she might want to be in a prison rather than up there. Because that's a lockdown facility. That's the other thing that a lot of people don't understand is, like, the mental institution is not necessarily where a lot of people want to be, because it's not. I mean, my wife works in a lockdown facility. She's a nurse there, and it wears on the the employees that are there, and not to mention that when you get these people there that are problematic, it's very dangerous, extremely dangerous. So it's not necessarily like a cakewalk either, just because you go, oh, she's going to go spend that. It ain't freedom. You're not eating good food. You're not having a good time. It's a bad situation.
Hey, Bri. Hello. Good morning. Welcome. Don't disagree. Here's a sign. Need to make greater strides in providing. Oh, too slow. Providing care for the mentally ill. However, till we get there, there are some people who are just too dangerous. Yeah, I agree.
Yep, I agree. P. Lola's mom, absolutely, or P. Lola's mom. I mean, look, we have to acknowledge what the outcome is, and that's what I think, and what I believe is what should be coming, what every judge should be held to when, especially if it's elected, judges should be held to figure out a plan for this prisoner, a sentence, and say, okay, well, what was the outcome here? If this person's right back in front of you, how did you sentence them? What did you do? What did you look into, and was it effective?
Have it goal based.
Have it goal based. I mean, there's got to be something there. I mean, we got to do better. We got to do better than what we're doing here, and what we're doing just isn't cutting it. It just
Have
is
you
not
watched
cutting it.
Judge Fleischer?
Judge Fleischer? No, I have not.
Out of Houston, Texas.
No.
He is amazing.
Something's ringing a bell
Harris
with that.
County. Yeah, he's the guy that wears all the bright jackets and the bow ties and stuff. And
you know what? I think I have seen. There was a case that I saw.
Yeah, he actually builds into their part of their bond, and
yes.
That they have to go back to school and at least get their GED, and they have all these conditions to better themselves.
Judges. This is the thing. Judges have a lot of leeway and a lot of ability to do a lot of things, and it's just a matter of whether they want to do it or not. And I think that a lot of times, judges get caught up. They get worried about the looking weak, and I think that's a problem. Which is why, to me, I don't think any judge should be an elected situation. I think a judge should serve a limited term, and I think new judges should be brought in. And I think there should be a training, and I think there should be specific trainings that go on there. But you've got to also acknowledge the fact that judges can get burned out, and a 30-year judge should not be on the bench for the simple fact you lose your ability, like you would with any job, where you just become desensitized to stuff, and you don't want that. So, I think a judge should serve 6-year terms, and then after that, they're back practicing law again. And it should be a stop, and then they can come back and maybe do it again down the road. But there should be at least a term on, term off, term on, term off, to give them a cooling off period. Make sure that they get their mind right. But then it also should require that they have to go through certifications and things, sentencing certifications, understand how to do this, understand what they need to do, because that's where you really can affect the change. And then you take the public eye out of it. In other words, where they don't feel like they're going to that they have to really worry about getting reelected or anything like that. And they said, we're here to help. And then I think what should happen is if they want to reapply for a judgeship, every prisoner they sentence, there should be a recidivism rate. There should be an involvement of where you're going, what's going on, and
do they have to keep up to date with any new?
Once they leave, they're gone. They're in the
stuff that is available for.
No, they're in the correction system, and then the correction system deals with them. The parole board deals with them. Anna Pekarsky, absolutely. That's why in fact, it's funny you should bring up Carly Gregg, because she, the driver case inspired me to want to go back and rewatch that closer, because that was a case that was absolutely, my opinion, heartbreaking case, because for so many reasons, but one being the fact that she was, first of all, rushed to trial. It appeared to be I don't think her counsel was very competent, especially in the reasons why they gave for rushing to trial, which said, well, she's being held in solitary. Well, now she's going to be held in solitary for the rest of her life. So I would have slowed it up a little bit and made sure you got your experts in line, made sure you did a little fighting. And I think what it really was you didn't want your life on hold during a pro bono case for no money, and you needed to get it done so you weren't going to lose money, have the focus on this for the next 3 years. That's what I really think was going on there. So they rushed it and said, well, yeah, we'll represent you, but we're going to rush you to trial. And then they fucked up. And then the judge threw everything. Oh, yeah.
Attorneys,
yeah, they did.
Not even criminal.
Well, that's what I heard. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was looking them up. I saw the one, they have criminal experience. The one was like a DUI attorney who was apparently pretty good. The other one did criminal work, but she was like
It was insurance
more
based,
did like insurance stuff. But I
yeah,
mean, they were experienced litigators.
but not.
But and they jumped in the case and they did it for the right reasons. But I think that they didn't fully, completely understand everything, and then they messed up some of the discovery stuff. But it was all a product of trying to go too fast.
Yeah.
Trying to, you know what I mean? And they rushed it to trial, and they shouldn't have rushed it to trial. They were like on this time frame, like we got to get to trial, we got to save this little girl. She's locked up in here, and it's like
Yeah.
instead they should have
And how did
slowed it
that work
down
for them?
and made sure they had all their ducks in a row. And now, you know, will she find? Will she listen? I believe she'll probably go on trial again, and I think when we have a downside, I've already got one day up. We're gonna do another day of we're gonna, you know, rewatch that. I'm gonna be rewatching that trial and re-breaking
Has she
it
put
down.
an appeal in?
Oh yes, and then there was they just not only did they put an appeal in, they just put a motion in for a new trial because after the trial, again, another reason why not to rush it. After the trial, it came out that I believe it was the stepdad, a family member, came forward with additional information on mental health problems that were hidden. It should have been allowed to come in. That pretty much, in the opinion of the defense, was like exculpatory evidence as to the mental state of Carly Gregg and supported. In fact, it went directly to the heart of the argument against the mental health defense that the state put forth, which meant it was really relevant, but the state was aware of it and did not turn it over and did not make the defense aware of it, which is a violation of the law, a violation of discovery, Brady violation potential. So as a result, they filed that. That's going to go back. It's got to go before Judge Dewey, though. So I don't know that Judge Dewey is going to do anything about this. It's probably going to have to be taken up by higher courts. You know,
She
it
needs
was
to be
just
deprogrammed for what she went through. Husband was a predator. She was brainwashed and still believed more things happened to her. Oh, you're talking about
driver. Yeah,
mm,
absolutely, 100%. Look. But the thing was, where she chose to commit that crime was not a good place to go put forth their insanity defense. Okay, Cherokee County is a law and order county, and that's why those prosecutors understood the audience they had.
and how much of a coincidence was it that the first wife was where she escaped from him at the same place?
Mm-hmm.
That's where she escaped with her child. That from that same place.
Appreciate it, P. Lola's
Thank
mom.
you.
Appreciate that. Absolutely,
It's lovely.
absolutely. The well, what was that question again, Jody?
I don't
I'm
know.
sorry. I don't know. I heard it, but now I'm like, I want to make sure I don't go off on a tangent on something. I want to make sure I specifically because I heard the escape part.
No, it's gone. What were we talking about?
Something about
So the first wife,
the escape
Gabriella.
part's what threw me off. So that's why I was like, go ahead. Yeah. So Gabriella,
So
yes,
she had the
she
child
escaped from the same
with him,
place, right?
and
Yeah.
it was at Jerry's place that she managed to finally get away from him. But you know, am I getting them mixed up? No, she had. Was it Chloe that went back to her mum's, and he took Hannah away from her for 2.5 days and wouldn't
Yes.
tell her where he was.
Correct.
But then she actually managed to go back to her mum's place with
Well,
Hannah.
Well, here's what I think is interesting about that. This is what bothers me when prosecutors get into that. This is what bothers me when we get into cases like this. It's like, okay, if there's a mental problem, you're expecting responsibility from somebody who's mentally defective. Remember, this goes exactly the question you and I were talking about, Jody. And you're like, well,
Mm.
shouldn't there be responsibility for not taking your meds? No, you're mental. Okay,
Exactly.
no, I mean,
Yeah.
no.
How do I
Like
argue that?
your problem, your
Yep.
problem. There's a problem with you mentally. You're not responsible. You're not a person who's operating on this mentally responsible.
Yep.
If you're mentally responsible and you're making a choice,
You would have taken
it's
your
a,
meds and you wouldn't be in this position.
Well, Anna, you're correct on that. Each judge does do different, and they apply the law as they feel it. But at the same point, now remember that's called precedent. So again, that issue is why, as I've said, and this is why you look above me. Justice is a process. Maybe it's this way. All right. The reason
Real
why is
good.
because you're looking at, like, you're correct, but this is why you have to see through the entire justice process. Many people look at the appeals process and say, "Oh, that's oh, they reversed it on a technicality." No, it's not a technicality. That is where when a judge goes off, right? When a judge goes off and says, "Oh, I decided I'm going to do this," he's got to have precedent, meaning
Yep.
he's got to have an interpretation of the law
Yep.
and says, "Hey, this other judge did this." Now, sometimes you don't because precedent's established by a judge, but there's got to be a thought process that another court is going to affirm and look at it and say, "Okay, we agree with the way this judge did this and why they did this." But that's where, again, this is why it's important to say you got to see through the entire process. So it's like a trial happens, and then that judge's the whole trial is going to get reviewed at the next level. But we don't really see a lot of that. I need to cover some. I know I have like the Texas Supreme Court. I've got a couple Supreme Court feeds. I haven't put a lot of that up, but that's really where some of the most important stuff happens because
Yep.
it's after the trial, the law gets reviewed, the judge's actions, the rulings get reviewed, and it goes upstairs, and then sometimes it gets kicked back down, and it gets reversed, just like Justice Smollett. He just got reversed, right? And that was out in Chicago. And why did it get reversed? Well, it got reversed because the prosecutor made an agreement with him, and then a special prosecutor brought in and said, "We're going to go around that agreement." And the Chicago, Illinois Supreme Court said, "Well, it's the ability to make an agreement with a prosecutor and the requirement that the state must adhere to that agreement unless the defendant did something against that agreement." In other words, Justice Smollett followed that agreement. Nothing changed. And they just decided to prosecute him on the whim of, "We just disagree with it because this prosecutor, we don't like the fact the prosecutor made the agreement." But they made the agreement. Justice Smollett, worked it out. But here's the problem. How do you return to Justice Smollett the damage to his reputation, the time he spent in jail? I mean, that's great that they did this, but they did it too late. So I think, in a sense, there should have been an ability for that to have been reviewed. And a lot of states kind of really clamped
Yep.
down on that ability to go outside of the court of
Without the
record
delays.
until after this stuff happens. Um,
So is
can
that
chur-
similar to what's happening with Karen Reid?
Sort of. Karen Reed's as being the Karen Reed situation really has to do with whether or not when a jury delivers a verdict and whether or not a
Or
verdict has to be
majority?
whether or not the idea is this: can the jury's verdict does a jury's verdict get recognized only in a courtroom when it gets announced, or when you have 12 jurors who decide on something and they've decided on it in that jury room and then they moved on in their deliberations and the judge failed to ask? Well, remember the defense. Listen, we're letting these defense attorneys off the hook for something that they had a lot of control over, and they let them walk out of the courtroom. And
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, my dad, he dealt with several of those situations with where he was involved in the appellate process where attorneys did just that. And it was something that my dad said, like, you just don't do that. Like, you stand in that courtroom, right? And you make a fucking record
You
and
object
you
to that.
force that judge to you put it on
Roll
record.
the
You
jury.
you
Mhm.
always poll the jury,
Yep.
and especially when you have a case that has lessers. You always poll the top end. Did the jury reach a verdict on the top? Did they go to the next one? Did they
And
go
it's
to the
not like
next
they
one?
were inexperienced either. Like,
Are you kidding me?
yeah,
The
they're top of the
attorney,
line.
no, the one attorney, what's his name? The guy out of
Jackson,
California.
Alan.
Alan Jackson is one of the most expensive
Yep.
attorneys in California.
Yep.
Making that mistake, he should be
But he
refunding
was it.
every. He should
Was
be
it?
refunding every dime back to
Was
Karen
it?
Reed.
He's getting paid for a second trial.
Well, it was a strategy situation, so it's not like that's not going to be something that we held against him as far as filing a complaint because it's a matter of strategy. Because what he would say is well, we didn't want to know because we'd rather
It
it
could
be
have been
kept
against.
secret. It could go against.
Yep.
It
Yep.
could have been 11-1, and then that gets out. But the reality
Yep.
is, so we were going to handle it later. But the reality is this is an example of why you handle it then because and it's inexplicable that you wouldn't have asked for the jury to be polled when you have
Yeah.
lessers, and you know that she could get acquitted of the top end charge that deals with life in prison, and you're not asking for the jury to be
But
polled.
they had time before that, like the verdict form. That was the messiest verdict form I've ever seen. They
Mm-hmm.
could have cleared it out easily and made it
Well,
very.
here was the thing. Like, to me, like that they made that big issue about that, and then for them to not make that issue at that time, I think it was just, to me, I think they were kind of like thrilled because I see the thing is Alan Jackson. It's not even clear Alan Jackson will be back for a second trial because remember the second, like, Karen Reed is not some multi-millionaire.
Well,
Okay,
they've
if you
actually
read,
got someone else now too. I think they've
well,
got another one.
I don't know that Alan Jackson will come back for a second trial. That's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. He might, I might, but I had heard that there was financial concerns about it because she spent a lot of money,
Mhm.
um, and she's pretty much tapped all her resources. So it's like now you're going to get the second trial, and it's going to be, you know, a lot less. Money's available. I mean, they can bill all they want, but Karen Reed's not working. She doesn't.
No.
She's gonna. It's gonna be against maybe potentially earnings, but then again, if she gets convicted, she can't really do book deals or stuff because you can't
Hmm.
profit off your crimes. So it's a very difficult situation, which is why retrials are kind of very bad scenarios. Which is why, again, we have to ask ourselves, how fair is it that the state gets millions and
Yep.
millions and millions of dollars of resources, which the
Hmm.
thought process is that they get all of that because you get the presumption of innocence, which is so powerful. But they dilute the presumption of innocence. They perp walk you. They are allowed to try to deflect it in court. They like I said, they have millions of dollars of resources that they're spending to come at you, to do every dirty tactic they can to try to
Yep.
subvert your right to due process, your right to be presumed innocent. They they're using all that against you. And then you come in and then you're like, okay, now I've got to have the resources to go hire an attorney, and I've got to go try to fund the defense, and I've got to try to put experts up, and I've got to try to do all of that, and I'm going to basically go broke, you know. And if you are innocent and you're having to fund that, boy, how difficult is it? Now you're into the point where, well, why would somebody plead to something? Well, they
Yeah.
plead to something because they look at it and they say, well, right now I'm going broke. I got to pay. I got to continue to pay this attorney
Yep.
all this money. And right now, yeah, Karen Reed is paying a appellate attorney right now because that's who's handling all her stuff to try to see if they can get the murder charges thrown out at the top end of this thing. I mean, look, it's that's a problem. What should be happening is, in my opinion, is if you want to make the criminal justice system fair and you want to really cut down on frivolous charges and victimless crime charges and crime, charges. Listen, just simply say this: every dime the state spends, the defense gets to spend, and they get the
Yeah.
presumption of
Yep.
innocence. And
Some
and
equality.
and attorneys, and whether that's on private attorneys or whatever, but the budget that you have, that every dime that's being spent will get done, and the state doesn't get to spend an extra dime on it beyond that. And then you go and you say, okay, here we go. And then you go into court and see what gets presented. I guarantee you would see budgets that would get spent, budgets that would get exhausted, states would be concerned, and it would be like, wow. But you know, I I always find it funny too. Has anyone ever heard of what? Has anyone ever heard a politician or anyone debate what a state spends or the federal government spends on prosecutions, on policing? But my
Nope.
God, if you were to suggest that we would give mental health care to somebody,
Hey, Tim.
oh my God, it would
Yeah.
be how can we afford it? But we can afford hundreds of thousands of
Oh
dollars to
yeah.
lock somebody up for a victimless crime, to prosecute somebody because they had a little marijuana in their car.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
got all the
Yeah.
police resources, the lab
Yep.
testing, all that stuff. And it's like, oh my God,
Mhm.
well, we got to get that person. Well, who did they affect? Well, nobody. It was just they had it. So the point is, you know, there's a lot that's got to be addressed right now
We
in our
have the
criminal.
same issue here in Australia with they privatised nursing homes, to make them a profitable business, and they will cut corners wherever they can, and it is
Well,
ridiculous.
listen, privatization is a problem because privatization puts everything to profit, and it
Yep,
doesn't put you to the interest of your customers or your
that's right.
clients. Puts you to the interest of your overseers. And the thing that you have
Hmm.
to establish within is, yes, there does need to be a balance between private and public, right? But the public is, you need to recognize and say, well, what is a common thing that we all take care of? What should commons be? Those are issues that are too big for a personal budget. So we all throw in a little bit to try to solve this issue. And as long as the litmus test is, is it improving our life? Does it make our life better if we didn't have it? And can we make it more cost effective than if it was in private hands? And that should be the analysis that should be being done on everything and how it goes. Improvement of life for everyone. That's got to be. I mean, we got to see benefits from it. And two, is it being more effectively done and administered than if it was privately, and what are the cost savings? In other words, showing it should be an analysis that's done that says if this was in private hands, worrying about paying shareholders and this and that this is something so serious, so imperative to our life and the benefits of our life, we can't have shareholders involved, we can't have
Yep,
profits involved.
yep,
But we also need to acknowledge the fact that it must be done efficiently, must be done effectively. And as a result, this is the standard that we have. So when a politician runs, they run on their standards of efficiencies. How efficient were you? Not get rid of the program, but can you more efficiently run the program? Can you bring a business sense to a public problem and say, like, let's do this, but let's get results. But at the same point, you can't cut costs and not get results for the people. There has to be results
yep.
because these are so important.
So, is the
It's that it
corrections
affects society in such a
accountable?
bad.
Do they
What's
get
that?
audited? Are they accountable? Or do they have people that go through and?
I Yeah. Have you ever heard of a corrections audit? Have you ever heard of that
Mhm.
going before Congress? Nope.
The stupid thing is in Australia with the nursing home thing, they say, all right, we're going to do random
And
inspections, but they give you 3 days notice.
well, let me. I mean, are they inspected? Well, yeah, except that like the standards, that they're coming in with, it's a two-pronged problem. You've got private run prisons, and then you've got underfunded inspectors who come in who, again, that's how they do it. They starve that end, so you have no oversight. You have people that are overworked who don't give a shit, and they come in and they're, you know, doing, the hands, both sides feed each other. So the inspections are worthless.
And we
Um,
used to have to, the more that was
I
wrong
mean,
with
there
the
has
people.
been some, like in the federal level, they've had some problems with security and deaths and stuff where they've had to go in. Just like when Diddy got up in that Metropolitan Correction Center, they went in with inspectors and they've done a report. But nobody knows what the actual outcome of that's going to end up being. Besides, they're going to go in and try to do some stuff. But then the question is, where do you put all those people? So where do you move them to? Now you're just going to make another facility overcrowded. So the question is, it's like, here's the problem. You shouldn't have made all these laws that required this much prison time if you didn't have facilities. So again, there should be a requirement that says, listen, what should you be locked up for? What is the benefit of locking a person up for this besides just you broke the law? But then when you look at the law books, a lot of people don't realize. And again, there's a great book. I have it out in my garage. It's in book form. It's before I started putting everything on my Kindle. Uh, but it talks about how basically the criminalization of society, that many people don't realize that on average, the average person in America breaks 30 laws a day. That is a
Really?
statistic. Yes. They don't even realize it. And it's a matter, like I used to tell my employees when I used to say stuff. I say, everyone say, you know, well, they come in and say, oh, I'm good. I said, oh, you are? You wait until I pay attention to you. I bet you I can find 10 things that I'm going to write you up for. Like, because you don't even know. Like, every person is cutting edges and cutting corners. Like, there's so much that you're doing, and you think you're doing it right. Yeah, go ahead. Give me 2 hours. Let me watch you. And I guarantee you, I can drag you back to this office and I can tell you, a bunch
Wow.
of things that are wrong. And that's how it is. We all think we're doing all right, but if somebody started watching us and just said, you know what, I want to go after that person. I want to take them out. I want to make their life hell. I want to hold them accountable. I want to muddy up their record. I want to make sure everybody thinks they're the most incompetent bamboozle in the world. It's very easy to do because there's so many laws and regulations and little things. And if you're not aware of them, it's awareness. And if you were trying to live by them, you're going to be stressed out as hell. So every time you step out your door, look, people don't understand. It's just like there's a lot of YouTube videos out there that talks about, like the conspiracy to commit, right? What does that really involve? And a lot of people are like, well, we don't even realize it. Conspiracy to commit a crime just involves you and me, Jody, saying, you know what? We're going to go, let's just say, you and Brybear said, you know what? We're going to steal Steve's cup. And Brybear says, you know what?
It's a mighty fine cup.
I went in and I went in and looked into Steve's actions, and I realized every day he leaves his house at 9 a.m. and goes to school. And you guys do that. You say, well, that's great. And we're going to plan to be there at 9 a.m. tomorrow. That is one act. All you need is one act in furtherance of that, and you're guilty of conspiracy to commit something. And a lot of people don't realize that. So there it is. Now, what does it take to get to there, right? You'd have to bust one of you two, and Brybear would have to turn on you and say, oh, my God, I did this. And they'd have to prove that act, and they'd have to prove you guys had an agreement. And, there's a lot of facts to it. But the bottom line is you and I just committed a crime.
Yep.
Whether we get called out for it or not. So if you invite everybody and you say, oh, that's fine, let the government listen to everything we're saying. I'm innocent, man. I'm an innocent person. No. What they're going to do is until you have a problem, until you step up on social media and you become a problem, you will be fine. You will walk among everyone. You have no problem until they want to take you out. And then it's just a matter of their menu of what do they want to pop you for today? What did you do today? What financial crime did you commit? What did you do? I mean, littering, driving, you pick up a phone. I mean, everything is going to be on the table. It's exactly right, Tanya. Stitches get stitches. But that's the point. So it's like, again, as everybody comfortably sits and watches sentencing and cheers on as these people get in there and says, and if the litmus test is simply breaking the law, you're going down a very dangerous road. And you better advocate that a good justice process exists for you. And you might say to yourself, well, I'm never going to commit a crime. I beg to differ. I bet you've committed a bunch of crimes you don't know. You've never been caught.
No, not me.
You've never been interesting enough for a government entity to come in and say, I'm interested in you and I'm interested in proving you did something. Because when you are, it will happen. And you will not even know it. You won't even realize you've done it.
So while we're on sentencing, what do you think the outcome might be for Miss Driver?
I'm inclined to believe that based on that judge, I don't know. There's something about the judge that tells me I think she's going to give her 30 to life. I think that she was moved to a degree. I almost felt like there was a degree of surprise that she wasn't found not guilty by reason of insanity, but I don't know. That's what I just picked up on. I just felt like she was.
So basically, she's been convicted of the equivalent of first degree. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she faces. I mean, the judge could give her life without parole, and then
so that's what's on the table.
Yeah, life without parole. Okay. Life without parole plus some. I mean, she could go consecutive. She could throw the whole book at her. I mean, she did kill a child, but remember, all the that's what I said when they set sentencing. It's not going to be a big sentencing because everyone that would speak for that baby, Benjamin, ain't coming to court. Yeah. So everyone that would speak for them is going to be within the family of Chloe, and Chloe herself, which is the one charged with killing her daughter and the husband. So the bottom line is I think that the judge will give her 30. I think what the judge is going to do is give her 30 to life. I think she's going to do a concurrent sentence with everything else, and I think she's going to say, "Young lady, go get yourself some help. Take advantage of every program you can have, and good luck on getting out of prison in 30 years." And then she's what, 20
with parole?
Yeah, she's 20. So I mean, like I said, effectively, if this has worked right, if she works her program, if she has good advocates and attorneys that are willing to fight for her, she could end up. With good advocacy, she could she could absolutely get help.
Is there like a minimum percentage of that sentence that She has to serve like an 85%.
No, when you get a 30 to life, it's every day of 30, and then you're eligible for parole. Okay. And most people
After the
do not get
30.
out most people do not get out after their first parole eligibility. So we're going to be clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it'll be, that's why it's like, she'll be what? She's 24, I think. So she'll be 54 when that happens. And, realistically speaking, she probably would be like 60. I mean, I think ultimately, in a sense, what this judge would probably want to do, I mean, as offensive as this might sound, is to keep her in prison beyond the time she could have more kids. Because I think that was a very big concern.
Yeah, does that, she gets time served, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was a concern that a lot of people had, was like, if she were to get out, at some point in years and have another child, I mean, that's a huge
Yeah.
concern. I think a lot of people would have, that you don't want this person who's already mentally ill, already killed one child. I'm sure that had to play in some thoughts in that jury room, was thinking like guilty by mentally ill means at least she's under custody of the state, under control, and hopefully can be prevented from ever having this happen again. So, yeah,
It's just
it's
tragedy.
horrible. Yep, it's horrible.
An
It's
absolute
horrible.
tragedy.
It is. It is.
And yeah, this guy is still out there doing the same thing to the same women.
Well, I think that's the thing that I think is
Yeah. But there was, when I was nursing, there was talk of that, but apparently it's like the whole
yeah,
the
that would be
chemical restraint as
that
well.
would be a bit problematic, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
um,
But
yeah.
the in the mental health, like as you're saying, your wife works in mental health um, lockdown facilities.
Hmm.
A lot of the issues, apart from the violence, is that they're disinhibited. Like they're like, if they're not causing trouble, they're trying to jump into someone else's bed, pretty much, and it's a massive issue, massive issue.
You're 100% correct,
Oh
because
my
that
God.
goes on my wife's floor,
Yes,
and those are
yes. So
problems they've had recent
there is
problems with
that.
that. Yes, I mean
It
that's an
has been
ongoing,
brought up.
that is an ongoing problem.
Absolutely.
And
So
it's definitely very problematic, and
yep.
that's why, like, um, I mean,
Do they have to be on birth control? Do they,
you
you
know,
know?
well, I
It's,
mean, the thing is that, that's a very controversial situation to
yep.
force. I think it's a dangerous situation, because, any finality like that, I think, to me, it's just a matter of keeping them separated from that. I mean,
Well, that's so hard because you're
well,
infringing on their rights.
well, well,
It's really
well,
hard.
sort of, except for the fact that, again, it comes down to a funding thing, where you say you send them to a women's only facility and a male only facility, and that's the best you can do. And then in the event that a child comes in to play, it's understood that that child does not get to be with them. They're going to be taken into custody of the state and dealt out through the child
Hmm.
state support system. I mean, that's all you can do. You're just going to protect the child that they produce. And now you can offer them those items. You could say, "Hey, listen, let's get you in a medicated state." But the reality of the situation is it's not. It's the idea here is figuring out how can we get people to stay treated. Like, for instance, the young man yesterday who got sentenced, Pearson, Spencer Pearson. He was on medicines. He refused. He said it gave him a headache. He went off his meds, and then he goes and does this, and he's you got Chloe Driver, who never got medicines, right? But apparently, since she's been in the facility, she doesn't like how the medicines make her feel, so she goes off of them because of the side effects. I mean, I think it's also difficult too to say, leaning too deep into the medicines front. I mean, that's not going to also be like the only method that we need. What we need is deep therapy. The
Yeah,
medicine should be something that's there to help
the chemical
temporarily
imbalance.
Well, whatever chemical imbalance exists, but then you've got to get into the trauma that exists underneath that chemical imbalance, because there might be a chemical imbalance there, but I guarantee you, if you dig into the life history of that individual, there are things that are interacting with that chemical imbalance. So
Absolutely.
it's reteaching them. It's taking the time to reteach them and go over things with them. And listen, there's been a deep. I know there's been a lot of studies that's done that says going into like hypnosis therapy, which allows people to re-experience and then reformulate events and confront events and do things like that. I mean, we got to have a broader. Listen, the thing is this: we have a body of people that are incarcerated, that are in state custody, who, again, we're not going to forcibly make them do it, but if we make it a positive aspect of their sentence, we can be finding out so much, right? And if all we have to do is be willing to dangle the carrot, right? And the carrot is what will get them to agree to do this. And we as a society can learn so much more than, and it will help others both inside those institutions and outside. We have, a body of people that are basically right now just being harvested for money. That's it.
Yep.
They're being harvested for money.
Yep.
Store them as cheap as you can. And then there's a huge public relations thing going on out here that says they don't deserve more than that, because they're not talking about the benefits that represents here, because we're forgetting the humanity of these people. Even though they've done terrible things, what makes us human, what makes us special, what makes America special, right, in terms of is our justice system. So when we go after that when you have somebody who suggests suspend the presumption of innocence, change the standard needed to convict somebody, those things that's a direct assault on the freedom in America, on the American uh, uh, experiment, right? Because that's it. That's what makes it. That's the difference. The ability that the government can't just come in, grab me out of my house, take me down, and say, "Here's these set of charges, and you have to disprove them." And they say, "No, we have to prove it against you.
What?
We have
Really?
to show you."
No.
Right? And they get mad.
Well, tell Ty that.
Well, but it's why Ty's still down there right now fighting. Because if they would have had that ability to just drag him out and say, disprove us, he'd be in prison right now. The whole fact that he's working on a deal that might or might not work in the end, but the fact that he's able to do that, the fact that he's still fighting 7 years later, right? That's a testament to the system. The people in power don't want that. So if you're somebody who says, I don't want to go after it, look, let me tell you something. And you're standing on the side of law and order, you're standing on the side, and that law and order is telling you we should get rid of this and get rid of that, all because it's not so bad, right? Because there's a process in place, a process that's so special and so interesting and so amazing. It is what makes us special. It is the thing that separates us. Every other country has militaries. Every other country, it's what we allow our police to do and not do to us. It's what we allow the state to do and not do to us without having to make a showing of proof. Okay? So that's what makes us special. That's what we should be fighting for. That's, we need to be fighting to preserve that with all costs, because that is without that, it's it's a scary thought, because they can come in, and if they don't have to make a showing in court, if they don't have to do everything, this man, it's like the guy that offed his kids down in Ohio, and there was a Julie Grant on court TV. It was like, we need to suspend her certain crime. No, there is not, right? And as horrible as it was, right? I had every faith this man was never going to walk free ever again. But you know what I did? What I did like about that case is the police took shortcuts, and they didn't read him his rights, and they got the police statement thrown out. And his attorneys went and got it suppressed. And the judge had the courage to suppress that statement. And ultimately, in the end, he pled guilty. The state went in and made a showing. He got, I think it was triple, quadruple life, and he's never seen the light of day. Should he have got the death penalty? In a case like that, I don't believe in the death penalty, so I'm never going to say the death penalty should happen, because I just don't believe that is something that should happen, because there's no finality. But if a death penalty is available, perhaps that is. But you know what? It got taken off the table because he agreed to plead guilty, and now he's sitting in prison. And to me, I can't think of a worse way to live than sitting in prison for the rest of your life, knowing you're never going to get out, living with what you did. But I also believe it's important to have these people around to understand why they did what they did. And when you kill somebody and you off somebody, you take that out of the equation. So the key to corrections and the key to improvement is understanding these people.
Yeah.
But we have
Learn
to
from
see
them,
them
study
as
them.
humans first. And perhaps
Hmm.
I can see people as humans first because I had a dad who was not just a criminal attorney, he was a criminal defendant.
Yep.
I watched him go through that process. I watched him serve a prison sentence. I visited him in prison. I watched him come
Poor
out on the
body.
other side of it. Okay, I've been there. I've been in there in my town. It was a media spectacle. It was on the
Yep.
radio. It was on the TV. There were reporters there. Had a lot of great interest. I've been on both sides, so I've seen it. And of course, then I've also seen the clients. I've seen these people. I knew these people as a little kid. I can remember sitting in there in the Chevalier case, sitting in there in the room with my dad's client. He was not out on bond, but he was sitting there. And my dad took me in, and I met him. And the guy was sitting there waiting. He did get convicted and ended up getting at the time, West Virginia, I believe it still is 15 to life. Is what he got. I think he's out of prison now, but he was charged with driving across the country and shooting a local doctor. My dad was representing him, and it was a temporary insanity case. Um, he got found guilty, but they gave him mercy, and he got 15 to life. But I remember sitting in a room with this guy, right? And I was introduced to him, and he was my dad's client. I can remember seeing a guy, all sorts of clients of my dad's and people. They're humans, right? At the
Yeah.
end of the day. But what I learned was because my dad always had a doctor that he would always send him to, most everybody had to go do it, and he would make him get evaluated because that was a component he wanted to have for sentencing if they did get convicted to bring it in and help mitigate sentencing and try to get the best deal for that. And sometimes it was a bargaining chip he would use when talking to prosecutors or trying to negotiate a plea if that came down the road. But he wanted to understand who he had. But the reality
Yeah.
of the situation is these people are human beings that have trauma in their life.
Yep.
They're flawed individuals, and they are people we have a lot to understand about because there is not but the problem is people are so scared of them and so
Yeah.
scared that they
Yeah.
fail to realize
Yep.
that the line of being that person and who you are today is very thin, very, very thin. And
Yep.
in fact,
And
like I mentioned, 30
the
crimes,
coin can flip at any moment.
30 crimes a day. So just become somebody that aggravates the government and you're having them up your ass.
Yep.
You will have them up your ass.
Because mental health issues could happen to anyone at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Any time.
Yeah. Well, Tanya Hill, the thing is this: you said, or they are just plain evil. There is no such thing. There is evil, but there is no such thing as just plain evil in the sense that we can't understand it. What makes them evil, right? That's what we have the opportunity to understand, right? And it's the
Study
idea
them and learn from them.
to study them and learn from them and understand, because what we want to understand is we want to understand at what level did that evil start to become out. There's a
Yep.
great show that
What caused it and how can we prevent it?
I believe it was on Netflix where it was these guys, these two guys, they were traveling. God, what the hell was the name of the show? I loved it. They were going around like to all the serial killers and stuff. Um, Tanya Hill, I've met some of the, I don't think you understand. I have met these people. I've met clients. I mean, I have met the worst of society. I don't think you quite, I mean, maybe you have too in the capacity. I have met real criminals, real people charged with all sorts of crimes. I'm from all different stuff. So I have met them. Yes, my dad represented the worst of the worst, and I was around this law office. I was around there. Like I said, I sat in jury deliberations. I sat and met the guy who allegedly sliced the neck of a woman who in a local case here, and he was a murder for hire case. And I was right there meeting him. I was in the courtroom when he was found guilty, but I was right in the back deliberation room because my dad would have let. They didn't sit in a holding cell. They sat in a conference room because that's what my dad made arrangements for. But we would come in and sit there and talk to them. And these are human beings that had a bad moment in their life that absolutely they deserve responsibility for. We absolutely have to decide things, but we also have to understand that we're responsible for the person that ends up on the other side. And we cannot just say, hey, life sentences is it. Our goal is just to get them to a life sentence because that's what the system's designed for now. We send them out and they just keep accelerating until they commit so many crimes until they 3 strike out. The 3 strike rule is the most laziest stuff in the world because what it does is it just promotes the idea. But who we're the people. Follow the money on the 3-strike laws, and you will start to get to the bottom line of the
Is that out of
problems
Texas? That
that exist.
3?
What's that? No, it's out of California. California's the one that adopted. But the point of what I'm saying is it's the money behind the prison industrial
Mm-hmm.
complex. It's the privatizing of prisons that
Yep.
led to 3-strike laws. 3-strike laws are to put people in prison because they want that prisoner in prison for their entire life.
Yep.
And
Guaranteed
then,
money.
and we haven't even gone into the aspect of just the inequality in some of these laws and the different people that are affected by it different than others.
So
And
your dad wasn't concerned for your safety at all with these people?
what's that? No, because I mean, first of all, he's their attorney. Second of all, they're not going to attack me in a courthouse. But thirdly, but again, a lot of these people. I mean, listen, my dad. He started when my dad started out. Like he was when he was in college. He used to go up to a place called Pruny Town, West Virginia. It was a home for at-risk youth that were sentenced, and he would go up there. That's where he dedicated his time learning. And it was some of those people that he ended up. Um, uh, and he ended up helping them out, later on in life, some of them because they would come out and, continue to be criminals into their time. But some of those, he actually recognized them, helped them out, and they turned their life around. There's several that my dad ended up helping free of charge. I mean, my dad was a horrible businessman when it came to things because he just absolutely, just refused to ever turn anybody away when it came down to that, and he would help them out. We are the opposite. If they get 25, they get out in 15. What do you mean we are the opposite? I don't understand what you mean. If they get 25, we get out in 15. I don't.
That if they got a life sentence, so they're not out before the 30 years, basically.
Oh, I got you.
But
Yeah.
if they given.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I know there's a lot of places where life sentences are not life sentences. Whereas,
and then you add behavior to that, you can have a couple of years taken off for that, and this.
I got you. I got you. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a situation where, well, of course, remember what was Australia? How did it begin? I'm sure you know the history of Australia. I mean, you guys were it was prisoners that were dropped in. It was a prison communal colony that when it was built out. So that's kind of an interesting thing to see how the criminal justice is. Of course, you guys don't have cameras. It would be wholly interesting. But you guys,
they do have cameras in the courtroom, but
they
to
just
actually
not publicly
access their
broadcast
live stream, forget it.
Now, do you guys have the presumption of innocence, or what is it? What is when you're charged with a crime? Is the onus on the defendant to disprove?
No, I don't think so. No, not. I don't know. I've never been charged with anything. Touch wood, but
I'll have to research.
No, I'm pretty sure that the defendant has to prove their innocence.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's how most jurisdictions are. You have to do that. It's very difficult to disprove a negative. Very, very difficult. Once somebody tells you, you're guilty. Let's see here, Australia. Burden
innocent until proven guilty. Are we? Okay.
Of proof.
Yeah, I don't know. I've only been to. Good morning, who to have?
Or okay, so there's a slight difference. It's basically there's two standards. It's called on the balance of probabilities in civil cases, and then I guess it's beyond, which is preponderance of evidence in America. So that's one difference. But it is beyond a reasonable doubt in criminal cases. So
it's
Australia,
worded differently, though. It's
yeah. I'm looking it up right now.
Something
just to read
suspicion, reasonable suspicion, or something like that.
Bears a burden of proving every element of an offense relevant to the guilt of the person charged. The prosecution also bears a legal burden, but the question is, is there a presumption of innocence? That's what separates.
I think we're innocent until proven guilty, but yeah, I still think the burden,
legal burden in relation to a matter means the burden of proving the existence of the matter. Let's see, does Australia have a presumption of innocence? Does Australia presume?
I remember following my brother through a court case.
Criminal defendants.
He got charged with stealing a four-wheeler, and the police turned up to his. Well, so he had a black utility, and he did do it. Back utility, lights off, kicked in a window, put the 4 by thing in the ute, went back home, put it in the garage. The cops turned up at his place because an off-duty police officer just happened to be driving by and thought it was suspicious, took down his number plate, plus a security guard. So they turned up at his house. Engine was still warm. Searched the entire house. Didn't go into the garage. Took his thongs because there was a footprint outside the window that got kicked in. You're gonna kick a window in with thongs, really? Like, no.
Wow.
Yeah. So basically got thrown out because the investigation was just ridiculous. But they had, and he couldn't get picked out in a lineup, and he was covered in tattoos, like just the biggest botch job ever. And I'm sitting in the courtroom because I thought he was innocent, and I'm like, the injustice. And when when he got when they threw the case out, he's gone, I kicked the window in with the boots I'm wearing in court today. I'm like, what?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was a turd. Yeah, he had to prove. Oh,
So
no.
I was just looking this up. Okay. So basically here it is. The difference is this, is the burden, basically the presumption of innocence and the burden of proof is only an evidentiary burden on the state.
Yeah, they didn't have enough evidence to convict him because
So
obviously the thongs hadn't given
so in
out.
other words, like it doesn't expand to where it doesn't. The person is not presumed innocent in the sense that, like in America, where you're presumed innocent, you can't be shown in cuffs, you can't. So what it is it's when the evidence is coming in, you're presumed innocent until the from an evidentiary standpoint.
Yeah.
So there is a little nuance there. I was just reading it on the attorney. I guess it's the Australian Government Attorney General's Department. So, and then also the other thing is that there is a right that in certain scenarios they can actually suspend the presumption of innocence if they believe it's an emergency, if they believe there's an emergency situation, or if there's circumstances that allow them to, but it would have to be done under only certain circumstances, which of course in America there is no circumstance where that would ever be lifted. So again, like I said, this is little nuances. But the good news is apparently there's 7 other countries that have adopted the presumption of innocence. Australia is one of them. I think the UK is in there. So I guess it's something that was signed.
It's sad. I know more about US laws than I do my own.
That it was signed as part of basically like the human rights covenants, I guess, that some of these countries have come to.
Do you want some pills at F? You're in the right place for distribution.
Is his case still pending on Jesus? What was his outcome, Tanya? Did he end up getting charged? Did he end up getting life, or what did he get?
That would have been back when Carl Williams was in play, wouldn't it?
Yep.
That was big. That was huge.
Well,
huge.
So, I guess Jody, we've hit the hour and a half mark. So I guess we're not going to play any clips. I don't think, because we kind of carried the conversation without them. Didn't really need it. But does anybody have any other questions about the driver case that we can answer, or anything that came up? Just directly, we kind of went down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. I'm going to try and keep following the Jason Spiller's case. And
now, have you been following Jody the Camp case out that Court TV's covered? It's not being aired.
What case?
The Brian, I believe it's the Brian Camp, I think the name. No. He's up in Massachusetts.
Brian Walsh, you mean?
No. This is a trial going on right now.
No.
It's an interesting case because it involves a home invasion. And it's basically where the prosecutor has charged this man, not for the first shot, but for the second shot. And this guy comes in the house, attacks the guy. They're in a struggle, and Camp shoots him once. He shoots him twice. And
There was a delay, wasn't there?
And the prosecution says the second shot is why he should be charged with manslaughter. So it's a situation where, again, I haven't followed it closely. I just know a lot of people are interested in it. I didn't know if you were following it at all, but it's a self-defense.
No, I chose to do a 5-year-old death penalty case.
But it's difficult to follow, really, because, I mean, Court TV is only putting out, like, limited information. They put out their closing. They put out their opening statements. They put out some of his testimony. They put out a police statement. But I don't know if it's being aired. I don't think it's being aired anywhere.
They probably just do the openings, closings, and...
Well, they have. Well, Court TV, a lot of times what they will do is they will record the trial, and then after the fact, they will put it out in their trial section, and it will be divided up. So you won't get to see it, but you'll be able to see at least some of it. But, of course, by then the verdict's already happened, so you're kind of already tainted. But, I mean, it's still, you can still put it together. I mean, it's still not bad. You just go in and watch witness 1, and then, all right, we're going to watch witness 2. All right, we're going to watch witness 3. We're going to knock out 5 witnesses today. You know, you can create your own days. But,
okay.
So, where are you watching on it, though, Udif? Where did you start watching it at? Is it on, because it's Court TV's not airing it on, they're airing it on their regular
one
channel.
Of the local? First Coast News often do.
Well, I was trying to find it. I haven't been able to find it anywhere because I'd like to be able to get caught up on it. Because it seems to be a lot of debate on it, and it's one of those interesting cases where you have a guy that's getting charged over a second shot.
Morning, Marjorie.
But yeah, Udif, where are you watching it at? I know are you watching just the clips that he put up, or is it Court TV actually airing it on their channel, or not channel, on their, well, I guess you call it their channel.
They've got a lot of offshoots too, haven't they? And then you've got all the little.
What's that?
Court TV have got all their like little offshoots of trials and playlists and.
Well, I don't know where all of it is, because I mean, if you go on their website, all right. So let me go on their website, because
I always forget to look on their website.
Well, that's where they took the Chloe Driver case and they put it on an unlisted playlist, and they were airing it on their website. I guess because people were, like putting it up.
I was a day behind.
People were putting it up and putting a chat up. So it was like, all right, so here it is. The Colt Baby Jealous Ex Shot Dead trial. All right, so here it is. So now it's like they just have trial updates. Watch camp details, break in, Jealous Ex Shot Dead. Day 3's got nothing.
Where did you see it, Udahef? It's Saturday over there, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, because I don't see where it's like listed, ability to go back and watch the trial besides watching the clips that they decide to put up. Which right now they've put, Brian Camp details. That was yesterday. Jealous. So people were probably watching that.
Is it Brian Camp?
Brian Camp, yep.
From where?
From Massachusetts. It's from Northampton, Massachusetts.
The Brian Walsh will be an interesting one. They've taken Bev Canoni off the case now.
Oh, have they?
She was, yeah. Have.
I guess you must have left us.
I will contact Udahef, and I'll send off.
Yeah, send off if he's got a place that he's watching. Man, that would be. I'd love to, because, like I said, I'd love to get caught up on the case because I haven't. Now there's a case I'm following, or it went to a verdict. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm airing. We aired days 1 and 2, but it's a really interesting court case out of Florida that just went to verdict yesterday. But it was a cop who blew up a gas station with his taser. and they're charging him with culpable negligence because he lit a guy on fire. He didn't die, but he got really injured. Oh, is that what it is, Marjorie Smith? Yeah, I know. Like I said, I'm disappointed in court TV these days because it's like they do all these damn segments and then they cut the commercial and they make it just, and then they put all these graphics up and with all this stuff, and it's just like, what are you doing? Like, just go back to the basics of covering the case.
Yeah.
It's like, let's just cover this case. You have to be a court TV member. Oh, I got you. To see the case you do? Is that what you're saying, Cindy Brown? Oh, well, if that's all it takes, I'll become a court TV member if I'm missing the trials. Maybe that's the problem. I mean, okay. I don't mind paying if this is where you can see the good stuff. So is it a member? Let's go here. All right,
must be a channel membership, I would assume.
Yeah, it is. It's got to be. Well, let's see here. So if you join,
MAV Brian Camp jealous ex shot dead trial. I'm not a member, but that is where what the video says. Is that on Court TV, Cindy?
Yeah.
See, she's an excellent little helper.
Well,
I threw a wrench at her.
So let me just see here. So it would be, is it like members only? Is it a members only live? Is that where it's at?
She said she's not a member, but she can see what the video says. MAV Brian Camp.
Oh, really?
They repeat.
Oh, there. Oh, hold on. Oh, members only content. Oh. Well, wait a minute here. Hold on a second. So, I can see what they are. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, it's not the full trial, though. It's unfortunately, yeah, it's members only content. Okay, there's that one. There's a couple on there. So it's not the full trial, though. This is what I've had. So any hire during this,
when you plan a trial,
yeah, it's not even. Well, it's not the full trial, though. What it is it's like a 20-minute clip. The other one is a 43-minute clip. They're withholding it right now, which is cool, and they're going to release it. What they're doing is they're just holding it for members, and then they release it a little bit later, which is cool. But no, I'm just looking for. It's really curious to me that there's no stream of the trial. Normally, trials like that are garnered that much interest. In Massachusetts, we know because they had like the DeLee case.
Yeah,
that's went up there. There's been several that have been up there that are broadcast, and then it's like Court TV does this where they're take a case and they just show highlights, and then they keep it close to their breast as far as like all information on it. And it's like, to me, my concern with that is you're controlling the information that we're seeing. So how can we really see it? We need to see it all.
And you don't know if it's going to be aired on there until the day.
Well, yeah. So, like I said, that's going to be. I'm sure there will be some more interesting cases to come this week on Law and Crime. If not, it'll be a YSL week, and I'll finish up the Florida case. So we'll see what happens there with all that.
Well, hopefully this week will involve the freedom, the actual proper fresh air freedom.
Oh,
man.
Oh, yes. We hope so. Well, that'll be on Tuesday. We'll find out.
God.
We'll find out. So
I've got everything crossed.
I know. Me too.
So can you imagine? So 7.5 years.
I know. And the thing is like even when he was out, he was not out. Like he's never been free to do anything.
Just imagine walking out of that courtroom.
Oh, well, listen, it'll be overwhelming, I'm sure.
Oh, my God.
It'll be very overwhelming. It's just we hope that he gets out.
I can afford to go over.
and then it's like, well, what do you do? All he's done for 7 years is fight this thing, know? And then it's like, we just hope. I hope he can find
stuff to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I hope he can. But the thing is, it doesn't pay the bills right away. I mean, he's got to. I know, but he's got to figure out. He's got to figure out how you go out. You're getting. You just spent that time. I mean, he's got to hopefully have. I think he's got a few things in the works. I hope he does because he's got to go out. He's got to try to figure it out again. Yep. But hey, it's better than where he's at. So
Oh, hell yeah. Whew.
yeah. So
Mm.
all right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up, Jody. I mean, it's been a
Alrighty.
good discussion. I hope everybody enjoyed the discussion out there.
Yeah.
It was a very fruitful one. The next discussion we have, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I'm going to have to do that mobile.
Mhm.
I'll be in Queensland
Oh, you
using
will?
my
Oh,
mobile.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
okay.
I've got
Well,
EV Max
gotcha.
on my mobile. So
Oh, okay.
uh,
Or if we need to do it earlier or something, I don't know what the
no,
plans are when you're going. I mean, we could try to do it
I'm
earlier
leaving
that
the
week.
19th. So, but
Okay.
yeah, we can work something out between now and then. Don't stress.
Okay.
Oh,
So
that's
the
beautiful. Sorry,
19th.
guys. Had to take a call. Just watching on Court TV.
Oh, so you're on the 19th. So our next plan will be the 7th. So
7th of December, which is 2 days after my birthday.
oh wow. So yeah, I mean, and even if
Oh,
we need
sorry,
to
not the next one, the following one.
oh, I see what you're saying. It'll be
Yeah,
the
yeah,
following for Christmas.
yeah. I
Well,
better fix that.
actually, that one, you know what? We're probably going to have to reschedule that
Okay,
because
that
you know
works for
what?
me.
I am going to be at my
We're
wife's
close to Christmas.
family's house, and that's going to
Yeah,
be we're celebrating Christmas that day.
yeah,
So I know that's going to be we're going to be
yep.
gone that Friday.
That's
So
fine. Works well for
we'll
me.
probably do what we might do is do like a holiday send off or do a little
Yeah,
virtual holiday party because there's really not like I said when you get into that part unless there's like a trial going on, like the YSL case, you're not going to have probably too many trials that are going to run
we
that
can
week.
pick our favourite trials.
And just well, I think what would be I think really what we should do is make that plan for that one because technically speaking,
You
for all practical purposes, that'll be the final one of the year.
know what
So I
I'd
think
really like to do is follow the legal process from start to finish, like
mhm.
because I don't even know what an arraignment means, or
Oh yeah, let's do
you know
that.
what I mean, like the legal
Absolutely,
process from the
yeah,
time you get picked up
absolutely,
right
and I know
through.
that very very well.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. But and then I think we should also just talk about like the cases. Each of us come in and talk about the case of the year for us,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
and
All
maybe
right.
and let the viewers also help us with that too. But yeah, absolutely, that sounds great. We're come up with a plan.
Works for me.
Where it's like I said, that's two from now. The next one we'll see. I don't know. We're
Yes.
still
Yeah.
going on. We're
Yeah.
probably gonna have some things to talk about possibly. Maybe we'll have a guest.
Maybe Ty.
Maybe we'll see. That would be a
He'd be
great
split.
to come. But we'll see. I don't know. He
Yeah.
might probably be overwhelmed with seeing family and stuff like that. I mean, I know I would probably want to take a break and just relax and,
Yeah.
go somewhere tropical maybe. He's already been down.
Really? He's in Florida.
He's got his fill.
He's over the palm trees, you
He
reckon?
wants to go somewhere where it's cold, man.
Yeah.
Cold and
Oregon.
snow in Oregon. That's right. So, all right.
All right. Well, you guys have a fantastic weekend.
Absolutely.
To your Thanksgiving week. And I'll enjoy the lovely weather that Melbourne is giving us at the moment. Not that I get to see a lot of it. I sleep through most of it. But yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we shall see you in fortnight.
Yes.
All right. There's
Let
the
justice
hang
prevail.
on, here's the out. Yeah. There's the outro. Rematch. Nope, that's not the outro. Okay, Jody.
Listen to our voices true.